Hello YouTube. So it's been a day or so now since another YouTuber posted up a video of a race between himself and his Porsche Taycan S electric car and a fellow YouTuber, Jeff Buys Cars, in a diesel BMW. The race was from John O'Groats to Land's End, and the idea was who could get there quickest and or who could get there cheapest. Now, realistically, this race was never ever going to be won by the electric car. As soon as you have to stop to charge up an electric car, you lose a race with any internal combustion car. It's as easy as that from a point-to-point time point of view. Unless that charge happens while you're both sleeping in a hotel, for example, overnight, in which case EV may well have a slight benefit depending on the length of the race. I'll be brutally honest, MacMaster in this particular video seems to have tried to actually do, the right thing and sort things out. Seems to be a bit addicted to the Ionity network because it's cheap rate, which if you're going to do that, it's not exactly a race, is it? If you're going to divert off the beaten track to go and find the cheapest charger possible, you're wasting maybe 10-15 minutes just getting to and from the charger from the motorway, so straight away you've lost 10-15 minutes before you even start charging. That's assuming you can charge, so already you're at a disadvantage, as well as the fact that you were never going to win the race in the first place. So it's about mitigating the losses here, coming in second but not coming in 3 days behind the diesel car. I've put in some figures. Myself, I've got two cars. Well, the family have got two cars. We have a Nissan Leaf 30 kilowatt hour from 2016. Because of degradation, it's now got 20 kilowatt hours usable electricity capacity, which means that at 4 miles per kilowatt hour, which you would get in the summer, you've got a range of about 80 miles from 100 to 0%. Obviously, you wouldn't do that. You do, maybe 60-70 miles. But yeah, so we use that as a runabout now, or if I'm out on my own on longer distances, I don't mind charging. But we've got a little one with special needs, and he also has a wheelchair and other gubbins and bits and pieces, so for the sake of convenience, we take the diesel car. It's a big estate car. We can load all his wheelchair and kit in there, and obviously we can go from point to point without stopping usually, and if we do, it's only for a couple of minutes to fill up with diesel. It's a no-brainer. It's your usage. Long journeys, we go in the diesel. Shorter journeys around the local town, around the countryside, or if it's just me in the car on longer journeys, I'll take the electric because I find it a nicer drive. It's quieter, there's less vibration, etc., etc. It's quicker. And it's also cheaper to run on smaller, on smaller local journeys. Where we can charge from home, which is critical, as MacMaster also says. Once you're out on the road, charging out on the road, then, that is then getting more expensive than a fossil car. But if you're having a full charge from home plus a charge out on the road, the average of the two still comes out less than a fossil car would. So, you're talking 150 miles range effectively, as long as you can charge from home and one rapid charge. The ideal situation, as long as you're not going to go out anywhere else when you get home, is to arrive at home on what you would call in the petrol world vapor, or static electricity as we'd call it in the electric world. There's very little point in filling up to 100% at a rapid charger 10 miles down the road if you've got charging at home, which is infinitely cheaper than the rapid charger. So the idea is to arrive at home with as little charge as is necessary to do whatever you can do or need to do immediately. So I'm always conscious I want to leave a little bit left, just in case we have to do an emergency hospital run and one of the cars doesn't start, the fossil car doesn't start for some reason, and we can literally just jump in the electric. So I try and arrive home with maybe 5-6 kilowatt hours of power, but it doesn't matter. I've arrived home, literally coasting onto the driveway sometimes, plugged it in and off we go. So this particular race, the Taycan Model S, judging by his previous videos, he's got the extra battery. So I've done some stuff here. As usable kilowatt hour capacity is 83.7 kilowatt hours. So if we assume that you can get 3 miles per kilowatt hour, I don't know what it will do. The stats that I've seen on various realistic websites say, 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour. So assuming that you can get, let's say 3 miles per kilowatt hour, bearing in mind weather conditions, etc., on average, then 100% range would be 251 miles. That would be going from 100% charge to 0% charge, rolling up at a charger, doing a handbrake turn on static electricity, and you're stuck. That should never, ever happen. It has done previously to everybody, or most people who have driven an electric car in the olden days, when the charging infrastructure was absolutely atrocious, and sometimes it was even broken, never mind miles apart. And I've had a hairy moment ages ago in the Gloucester area when I was on the motorway and arrived at the Gloucester services in the cold, and the services had just shut at 10 o'clock at night, but luckily the chargers were still open. Never again will I make that mistake. So I am going to do this race, not physically because I don't have a Porsche Taycan, and I certainly wouldn't dream of doing it in my Leaf. Not even a 40 kilowatt hour Leaf, possibly a 62 kilowatt hour Leaf, possibly, but that would be pushing it for other reasons to do with the way the Leaf charges multiple times on longer runs. So we'll leave that there. That's a topic for another time. So let's say we're going to take this Taycan and we're going to have a look at the various graphs that are available for the charging, which is a bit like you see the boy racers chipping their cars to get the maximum performance out of their cars. We have similar graphs on EVs, but they're for charging, so they tell you how fast the car can accept electricity when it's at a certain rate of charge itself. So the fastest that the electric cars will accept the electricity is when they're empty, usually. And they tend to be quite high, all the way up to about 80%, and then most of them drop quite dramatically. There is a gradual curve, usually going downwards from 30-40% charge all the way down, but the biggest drop off is when it gets to about 80%. So what does that mean? Well, if you consider you're at a petrol station with your fossil car and you pump your fuel into the car and the nozzle clicks off, and you think, okay, so you've done that, and it's literally done that after a few seconds of you doing, your tank's not full because you arrived on vapor, you've put the nozzle in, you've pumped about 3 seconds worth of electric in, of fossil fuel in, and it's clicked off. So it's not full. So there's something in that mechanism that's a bit of a random guess to say, it's full. So we fill it up, and we know that we've put, 50 litres into the tank, and the tank is 55 litres, and it clicks off. So what do? Well, you could either stop filling your car up and get on with your journey, or you could spend the next 5-10 minutes there going click, 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 trying to squeeze that extra 5 litres in, spending another 5 or 10 minutes doing that for that extra 30-40 miles worth of range in your fossil car that extra almost a gallon would get you. But it's cost you time. So the key thing is with the electric cars is to surf that wave up to 80% and surf it as fast as your car will take it. Now, some cars will charge faster than others. My car, for example, the Nissan Leaf, charges on the CHAdeMO system, which is not the standard system anymore, although it's still quite widely supported and will be for some time until it's phased out. My charger in the car will only charge at a maximum rate of 50 kilowatts. So that means in an hour, in an ideal scenario, which is never going to happen, and assuming a very flat 100% charging curve, that in an hour I would put 50 kilowatt hours of capacity for electricity into my battery. That's not going to happen because it tails off when it gets up to about 60-70%. So again, that's where the curve comes in. Now, with faster chargers and faster cars. So the Porsche Taycan, for example, has got an 800 volt system for charging, which means it can charge 300 kilowatts plus in terms of speed. So you're talking 6 times the speed that my Nissan Leaf will charge. So for every 10 minutes my Leaf charges, a Porsche Taycan has put in effectively 60 minutes worth of what I would charge. It's absolutely massive. But again, the key is to ride that curve, because as soon as you get it to 80%, that speed plummets all the way down to just lower than 50 kilowatts, which is the speed I charge at. So there's no point in stopping after 80% unless you definitely need the charge for a buffer, safety, etc. This is why you see Teslas, and I know McMaster doesn't like Teslas and blah 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 and all that, but this is why the software in the Teslas, through all the research that Tesla have done with the battery performance and things like that, when you plan a route in a Tesla, it will use the performance option. So it will basically say, right, I'm going to use that usable bit of battery between, say, 10% and 80%, and that's the range that we'll use between the chargers, so that when you arrive at a charger, you're on, say, 10 to 20%, and you leave when you've got enough power to get to the next charger, which is quick. So you do lots of splashes and dashes, which is a lot quicker than doing one long, very slow charge. And that's where the Tesla system is great, because you can stick in Land's End to John O'Groats and it will say, right, charge here up to 60%. Whereas, some people say, why? Let's charge to 100%. And then it will say, right, 100 miles down the road, we're going to stop again and charge to 40%. Like, why? It's because it's the quickest way of doing it in terms of raw time. So let's take the Taycan. We start off, I'm going to make an assumption that it's the 90 whatever kilowatt hour version, which is 83.7 kilowatt hour usable according to various websites. If we consider, if we take an average of 3 miles per kilowatt hour, 100% range will be 251 miles, 80% range would give us 200 miles, a 20% range or charge would give us 50 miles, and if we put it down to 10%, it will give us 25 miles. So that is really what we want to do. So we want to go for a range of between 50 miles left and 200 miles left. It gives us effectively a working range. I put it down here somewhere. Where is it? Let me just find it. Gives us a working range of about 180 odd miles anyway. So on that basis, I've done some quick guessings. The other thing to do as well, by the way, is he started off on John O'Groats. We got no idea, at least I didn't see it, I might have just switched off, what his state of charge was when he left John O'Groats. And this is critical, because the John O'Groats charger is a very, very slow charger. It's 50 kilowatts. Okay, so he's charging his 300 kilowatt capable Porsche Taycan at no faster than I would charge my 2016 Nissan Leaf. So that is not making the best use of the infrastructure and the car. However, that's all he's got. Up there's very few chargers. As he pointed out in the video, there are a couple of Osprey chargers going in, which appear to be 75 kilowatt chargers. They're only slightly faster than the ones that are there at the moment, and that will be down to local grid capacity. But even the 75 kilowatt chargers will be slightly faster, but not groundbreaking compared to what he can do on that car. So the key thing here is to not spend a lot of time on slow chargers. The key thing here is to seek out the fast 300 kilowatt hour chargers and use them, because they will literally just pump the electricity into the car quicker than you could go to the toilet and have a cup of tea and come back again, the sort of, only just a bit longer than filling up your car at a petrol station and waiting in the queue while somebody buys a loaf of bread, So with this in mind, some of these charging points I'm not going to fill up to 100%. And one of those is actually John O'Groats. And I'm assuming that he's at John O'Groats empty. Literally 0%, which obviously wouldn't have been the case. In an ideal scenario, he'd have topped up. I know he stopped off on the way between Inverness and John O'Groats. In an ideal scenario, he would have topped up the night before while the car was still warm. And it didn't count, you know, because obviously Jeff buys cars, didn't go and fill up his car, did he? Straight away at John O'Groats. No, he already had some diesel in the car and then went further south and filled up. So that was a bit of a disadvantage there. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume that we've got 0% charge at John O'Groats. And we're going to leave, not with 100%, we're going to leave with 75% charge. Because it's a slow charger, we don't want to spend too much time on this charger. We want to charge to get to the nearest fast charger that's capable or more deserving of the car's presence as fast as possible and get moving with a buffer. So we're going to charge to 75%, which will be about £43. And we're going to then go to a Tesla supercharger in Aviemore. Now there are other chargers, fast chargers around in the area, but they only have a couple of sockets, a couple of chargers. So, you know, working on the basis that this is a race, we're looking at convenience, we're looking at not waiting for chargers. So I'm using a Tesla charger at Aviemore here because there's quite a few of those there, and it's open to non-Teslas. So with the app, you just sign up, you know, stick all your details in, whatever. So at the Tesla supercharger, unfortunately, it's only 150 kilowatts, so it's quite a slow charger by modern standards, but nevertheless, it's faster than the 50 kilowatt one up at John O'Groats. So we're going to stop, having done 149 miles from John O'Groats to Tesla in Aviemore. We've been on the road for just over 3 hours and arriving with 13 kilowatt hours left. So we're talking, not a lot of power left, probably about 20% left. And then we're stopping there with 39 miles range left, and we're going to top it up to 100% on a 150 kilowatt charger. So it's going to take some time. I reckon it's going to take about 40 to 50 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. Luckily, there's a hotel there, and you can stop for a cuppa, because after a 3 hour drive with 149 miles along the A9 between John O'Groats all the way down to Inverness and Aviemore, you're going to want to brake, because you might be following lorries all the way down the bendy roads, etc., etc., with the weather and whatever. You want a break. So let's have a break. Let's have a 40 to 50 minute break at Aviemore, have a cup of tea, go to the toilet, let the car charge up to 100%, which will cost you about £44. So we're running at about £80, £87 so far. So after charging Aviemore, our next stop will be a long run. We're going to go to Gretna Green. Now 100% range on the car is 251 miles at 3 miles per kilowatt hour. Now we're going to go over the hills again from down the A9 from Aviemore down to Gretna Green. So it's quite a long run. It's going to be 212 miles and it's going to take us 3 hours and 10 minutes in theory. And again, we're going to arrive with a similar state of charge. With about 40 miles left, so that gives us a buffer to look around Gretna Green area if we can't get the charger. And when we're at Gretna Green, it's a BP site, but it's Ionity chargers, and they're 350 kilowatt chargers. So here we go. We are now on HS3 electric version. So we are on the super duper fast chargers, assuming you can get on them. This is obviously why I chose the Tesla Aviemore ones, because there's lots of chargers. BP Gretna Green is likely to be busy, but it's an Ionity system, so he gets what he wants, which he wanted to use Ionity because he gets a discount. So we're talking 30p a kilowatt hour, and here we're going to charge 90%, so slightly more than the 80. Just give us a buffer, and it's going to cost us £18.69. That's a bit of a difference, isn't it? No wonder he wants Ionity, but you know, this is a race after all. Is it a race for purely cost, or is it time, or what? Having said that, you're always going to lose the time race, so, you know, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So I reckon we're going to be charging for just 20 minutes there. So again, having been driving for what, 3 hours 10 minutes, you're going to want to pee, aren't you, to get rid of that coffee you've had at Aviemore and all the drinks and all the cakes and whatever that you've been eating. So we're going to go to Gretna Green and we're going to grab some stuff from the garage or whatever's there. We're going to charge up for 20 minutes and it's going to be to 90%. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to Starbucks. From Gretna Green to Starbucks in Stafford. And this is a 175-mile leg. And it's going to take us just short of 3 hours. And we're going to arrive with a little bit more charge this time, so with 16 kilowatt hours charge. So we're going to have just over 20% with 50 miles worth of range left. But there's a reason for all this. And we're going to fill up, again, it's an Ionity charger, and it's a 350 kilowatt charger, so we're riding the fast wave. We're going to fill up to 90%, and it's going to cost us about £17 at 30p a kilowatt hour, which is what McMaster says he pays. I haven't checked that personally, I'm just going to have to take his word for it. So after having charged for another 20 minutes at Ionity in Stafford, we're going to leg it to Porsche in Exeter, all the way down through Bristol, etc, etc. This is a 185-mile leg. Okay, now bearing in mind at 3 miles per kilowatt hour, we've got a range of 251 miles. So this is comfortably within the range of the car, assuming that you're not driving it at 80, 90 miles an hour, which he says he wasn't because we're sticking to the speed limits. Sometimes it might actually be faster to travel below the speed limit because then you can push a little bit to the extra charger. But anyway, so we're going to land at Porsche Exeter, having done 185 miles from Stafford. We've been on the road again for another 3 hours, so we're going to stop. We're going to have a pee if the Exeter Porsche is open. If they're not open, or there's an issue with the chargers, then there is the Porsche. There is the service area nearby, which has got a huge number of chargers. That's grid serve, so it'll be slightly more, but again, we have an option here. So we're going to arrive at Porsche Exeter with 40 miles left, and we're going to charge to 90%. Which is going to take us about 20 minutes and cost us £18.50. So why are we charging up to 90% at Exeter? Easy, because now we're going to Land's End without stopping. We're going to get all the way to Land's End, 119 miles. We'll be on the road for 2 hours and 24 minutes in ideal situation. Obviously, it might change. And we're going to arrive with quite a high state of charge. We're going to arrive at 35 kilowatt hours worth of charge, which is going to be about 107 miles range left when we arrive at Land's End, assuming we get 3 miles per kilowatt hour. If we have a nice economical run and get more than that, we're going to have more range left. So we've got a considerable buffer of 107 miles to go wherever we want after that. If the Land's End charger isn't working, realistically, you might not even want to charge at Land's End because, again, it's grid serve and it's expensive, but that's options. So yeah, we've got there, and that's us. So altogether, we've been moving in the car for 14 hours, well, 14.7 hours, so let's call it 15 hours. And we've been charging for 2 3/4 hours. So you're talking 18 hours, less than 18 hours. So 17, 18 hours altogether is your total journey time from John O'Groats to Land's End. We've had 5 charges. The total cost, without charging at Land's End, is £142.59p. May vary, of course. The prices that I've seen on the net are from November 2023. And it covers all the options. You're arriving at a charger with, 39 miles left of range, just in case there's a problem at the charger. There are other chargers nearby. Most of these are other options on the route. Granted, you might have a little wait. If you're insistent on using the Ionity sites, they're not exactly trouble-free from what I've seen on the internet. They're also queuing because obviously Ionity is a brand shared by big manufacturers such as Mercedes, Porsche, Volkswagen, Audi Group, etc., Hyundai's and whatever. So there's likely to be a large number of different branded cars within that Ionity discount group that will be waiting to charge, because who wouldn't if you're charging 30p a kilowatt hour, whereas up the road you've got a service area that's charging 69p a kilowatt hour on grid serve, or even more. But again, it depends what you want to do, doesn't it? if you've got two identical chargers in terms of speed, one's got a queue of 5 people waiting, and the other one hasn't got a queue. The one with 5 people waiting is 30p a kilowatt hour, and the other one that hasn't got a queue is 69p. What's your priority? Is it cost, or is it lack of hassle, lack of convenience? Because clearly, waiting in a queue of 5 people, which is disorganised for 4 chargers, one of which might be bad, and the whole thing grinds to a halt when you've got 4 people charging, which just goes to show how shoddy the Ionity infrastructure appears to be when it's under pressure. You kind of wonder, you know, from my point of view, I'd go to the chargers that have got lots on, which is why I went to Tesla in Aviemore on my list, because there's lots of chargers there, it's reliable, it might be slower, but at the end of the day, you've just driven for 3 hours, you know, have a break, have a chocolate bar, as the advert says. And, you know, it's all about, you know, mental health as well, isn't it? You know, why put yourself in a situation where you've only got the option of 1, 2, 3 or 4 chargers even, that are very, very busy, and you're stressed, you've just had a 3-hour drive, you're in a race, when 5-10 miles up the road, either down or up on your way, you've got, you know, 8, 16 chargers sat there ready and waiting at double the cost. What's it worth? What's the stress or lack of stress worth to you? My priority, if I knew that Ionity chargers, or any other brand for that matter, were going to be an issue, or potentially an issue, would I want to take the gamble? Me, if I'm on my own, maybe. If I'm in a race, no. I want to go where I'm comfortable that I'm going to get on a charge ASAP and go, regardless of the cost. You know, if you're driving a Porsche Taycan and you're fussing about 30p a kilowatt hour, as I once, many years ago, I had a little Mercedes A-Class, and I went into the garage while my car was being serviced, and it was a Mercedes E55 AMG, and this was when I was like 20, so I was, you know, in a foolish phase of my life, and it was a Mercedes E55 AMG, and I was looking at the car, and I said jokingly to the sales rep, I said, "Blooming heck, I wouldn't like the fuel bill for this." And he said to me, "Sir, if you can afford the car, the fuel bill will not be a problem. If you're driving a Porsche Taycan, just pay for your electric." You know, what are your priorities? If your priorities really are saving money instead of time when you're in a race, then you really shouldn't be in that race. Anyway, it's not all about Teslas. You could do exactly the same journey in a Kia e-Niro, in a Ford Mustang Mach-E, you know, in any car really that's got, you know, a 250 mile or less range. You just have to put an extra charge in. It's not, you know, I wouldn't dream of doing it in my Leaf. I'd probably do it in a Leaf 62 kilowatt hour version, because it's got a range of, you know, 200-ish miles. So you'd have to put an extra charge in. The issue with that is you've got a CHAdeMO connection, and there's not a lot of new CHAdeMO stuff going in, and in some service areas there's, like, you know, new stuff that's put in has got, you know, 8 CCS and 1 CHAdeMO, and the CHAdeMO is usually shared with the CCS, so if it's a busy site you might end up waiting even longer than you would do if you're in a non-CHAdeMO car. But certainly any car with a reasonable range with CCS, hopefully fast charging, so something like, you know, even a Volkswagen ID3, you know, with a range of 200 miles and 120 odd kilowatt hour charging speed, you could do this, maybe add on an extra hour on the journey time. Yeah, it's not rocket science, it's not impossible. You're never going to win a race with a fossil car unless that fossil car happens to be a Ferrari with, you know, 15 miles per gallon consumption figure and a 20 litre fuel tank that's got to stop every, you know, 30 miles or something like that. When you compare it to a modern diesel, which can quite easily get, you know, 500 miles out of a tank without stopping, I mean, clearly you're going to need to stop for a pee, aren't you, unless you've got a catheter and a stoma or something like that. You're even going to need to stop and eat, surely. But anyway, you're never going to beat a petrol or diesel car on pure time. which is when you have to look at the other selling points of an electric car, which are the comfort, the quietness, the performance, the ease of driving, far less stress in terms of driving, and ignoring the charging situation, which can be an issue. You know, I'm not going to sit here and preach and say it's the be all and end all or whatever. Charging queues and charger availability and vandalism nowadays, where people are going around and literally chopping off the connections for the copper in the cables or whatever it is in the cables, they're taking them away. So without all that, you know, the cars themselves are great. They're nice driving cars, etc., etc. You just need to plan your journey, and MacMaster has supposedly planned his journey down. The route that I've got here does have risks in terms of the Ionity chargers, but his preference was Ionity. But the best thing to do in terms of the charging is to ride that wave. So I've been rambling on for ages. Might not even post this to YouTube, but if you're watching this, clearly I have. It's my first ever proper serious YouTube video, and it's been done in one take with no editing, in a scruffy room. This is my wife's office spare room, with my grandad hair and my grey beard and whatever, and no flashy graphics and no onwards my friends rubbish and all that crap. This is just basically a driver who drives an EV with a limited range and a fossil car as well. I've got my feet in both ponds. So my choice would always be, local journeys would be the EV, long distance journeys on my own would be EV, anything else would be the fossil with my current EV. I am trying to convince the wife to get a Tesla. Unfortunately that's on hold at the moment, but obviously then that puts a different slant on things, and we would probably end up selling the fossil altogether and using the Tesla for long distances and the Leaf for short distances for local town shopping and stuff. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you've got all the way to the end, it's a mammoth 32-minute video, far longer than I anticipated doing, but I can ramble on as I'm doing now. So thank you very much for watching, and good night.